Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special presentation of Not That Bad, a movie podcast. Yes, this is a special, of course. This is one of our monthly specials, but this episode is going to be a little bit different. You see, because we have a unique perspective before going into this episode. We talked about The Punisher from 2004, and in that episode, my illustrious co-host sitting in front of us here telegraphed his opinion on this film a little bit. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to Not That Bad Warzone. I am one of your co hosts. My name is Connor, aka Jokester Vigilante Prank Castle, and I am joined by said illustrious co host. No, that's not Jigsaw before the whole glass incident. That's Mr. Gabe Tice. Gabe, how you doing today, buddy?
Calling this movie a joke is right.
I want to give the audience a little bit of a background because this is not a movie that if you know it, you probably don't like it, and if you don't know it, you just don't know this. So this movie came out in 2008, 2.7 on Letterboxd, 29% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is the lowest grossing film based on a Marvel property of all time. Nobody knew about this thing when it came out. Nobody cared. The people who did see it really didn't like it, but there has been a cult status growing for this film for the last few years. And it's an interesting case study. I want to know, what background do you have with this film before we kind of get into the trenches with each other here?
My background with Punisher Warzone.
Yeah, your
Okay.
background with Punisher Warzone.
Let me say this off the top, because you're casting me as the villain of this episode.
Hey, no. Look, this is all
being
about
thrown
perspective.
into the grinder until
This
I
is-
emerge as the deformed mobster known as Jigsaw.
Hey, man, this is all about perspective, all right?
So
One of us is the villain for whoever's coming in with a different perspective, man.
Let
That's
me
all
tell
this
my
is.
side of the story, okay? Because this is not a battle of good versus evil here.
No,
okay?
it's not. No, it's
there are no heroes when it comes to Punisher Warzone, truly. So let me properly set the stage. And let me say this. You asked my background of this movie. Okay, my background is I have given this movie too many chances. I have given this movie so many watches in the hopes that I will join this fandom, this ever-growing fandom, because on paper, this should be a movie that I basically adore. This has all of the ingredients of a guilty pleasure.
I want to get into the conversation about some of the things in this movie, but I'd like to throw it to you first here and just say what's something you want to bring up first, bring up to the plate to see how it fares.
Yeah, should we clarify that we're not doing our typical good, bad, and ugly
Everything's being
format.
thrown out the window here.
just like the rule book to making a good movie,
fuck.
our format is being thrown out. Let's start with some background on how this movie was made, how it came about.
Yeah.
There is an interesting production history behind this. So 2004's Punisher comes out, doesn't do great in theaters, but there is a boost in sales from DVD. So there was talks of a sequel with Thomas Jane returning as Frank Castle. The plan was always that the Punisher would move to New York and, do battle with Jigsaw, who is, I believe, the Punisher's most famous nemesis from the comics, to my understanding.
Yeah. I understand the same. Yeah.
And it was going to continue that more grounded and gritty tone from 2004's The Punisher. And then, for reasons I'm not entirely sure about, Thomas Jane eventually exits. It sounds like he was frustrated by the production delays, and he was frustrated by some of the new directions they were talking about going. Let me get this out right now. It is very similar to Michael Keaton leaving Batman after hearing what Joel Schumacher hadn't planned. Because this is basically, what if Joel Schumacher directed a Punisher movie? It is as wacky and zany and without dignity as a Batman and Robin, right? And Thomas Jane, I believe, saw the writing on the wall and said, you know what? I'm good. Peace out.
I do want to say Lexi Alexander was coming off of a movie called Green Street Hooligans, which is often regarded as a very good movie. Features Elijah Wood, and has well, it has a decent rating, 3.3. But man, there's a lot that goes into this. One thing I do want to bring up for you as well, I don't know that you know about this, but there is actually an unofficial Punisher 2004 sequel, a short film with Thomas Jane called Dirty Laundry,
Punisher
which
Dirty
is
Laundry.
truthfully for me the exact thing that I would have wanted from him as the Punisher. I think he is both the second best and third best Punisher, and the second best is in that short film. So go watch that if you haven't seen it. This is what we got though. This is not a sequel in any way. This is, they decided to scratch it, start fresh, with Lexi Alexander, who was not familiar with the Punisher comics before watching this. Or before getting the job for this, rather. She was a fan of some German comic books. She's a German director. And when I do want to bring up one production note about this. Coming into the movie, Marvel sent her a bunch of copies of Punisher comics to get her caught up with the lore and the characters, to know what direction to take. But they were so cheap during this time period that they printed them with only 3 colors. The colors were only red, white, and black. So she thought that this was like a Sin City type thing, you know, where like the comics were devoid of color. She was going to do that for her movie, until she brought it up to one of the Marvel Studios people, and they said, no, we just didn't send you the full thing. We can show you what it really looks like. And then the color was born in this movie, and she was determined to put color into every frame, like you were looking at a frame of a comic book. Times have changed in the world of Marvel films since 2008.
Did anybody care how this movie turned out? Did anybody want to make a good movie?
Do you know what's kind of amazing here?
Marvel Comics couldn't just send her a crate of already published Punisher comics?
Do you know what's amazing about this? Is like,
damn,
this movie, like the producers of this movie were mostly from the Lionsgate side, right? Like that was the production staff, but the executive production staff was all Marvel people. Stan Lee, Kevin Feige, whatever you pronounce his name. I think Ogden Gavansky was, I think he might have been Lionsgate, or he might have been something other. But this was under like a new window of Marvel films that they were building at this time.
Marvel Knights,
which was a comic book. It was a comic book bunch. Yeah, Marvel Knights.
Well, it was a comic book line that was launched for Marvel's darker characters, their anti-heroes. I think Ghost Rider was also
so yes, Ghost Rider was under the umbrella, and funnily enough, the only 2 movies that were under the Marvel Knights umbrella, which was an arm of their Marvel Films production group that they were building, was this film and Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, which I will strongly say I do not like. I will never be bringing it to this program. But there was a lot, like you said, that was going against this, as far as like just getting into the initial production. But one thing that was going for it from the time that they started until the time that I finished watching this movie was Ray Stevenson as the Punisher. I think you could not have picked a more perfect looking actor for the part. I think the direction that he was given personally was perfect for the character. I think it was the most comic accurate version of the character from the comics I've read. I'm more familiar with like the Max Comics versions of the Punisher, but I have read other stuff as well. And I think as far as a presence of bringing what the Punisher does in the comics to film, this is the closest we have ever gotten to what the comic books are trying to establish. I'm curious what your thoughts are on Ray Stevenson, because it sounds like with much of this film, of the things that you do not hate, you have a complicated relationship with it. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Ray Stevenson.
I agree with everything you said, and they couldn't have cast a better actor to waste in this movie than Ray Stevenson. Remember how I compared the previous Punisher movie to a sitcom? Well, this is a cartoon. This is a Saturday morning cartoon, just sticking to Ray Stevenson's performance, what he is allowed to do. I think he's pitch perfect. it's not as interesting of an interpretation as Thomas Jane for me because it is so direct of a translation, which is something that I like in movies is when there is a filmmaker's take, a
Right.
filmmaker's spin on the character. That's sort of why a lot of fan favorite casting for me, I acknowledge just how clean of a translation it is, but I do like the fact that Thomas Jane had his own take with the character
Well,
in
it's like a
that
Michael Keaton
2004 movie.
effect. It's like Michael Keaton was a guy
Huge
who
Michael
people
Keaton
were
effect.
super upset about, but then when you see the way that the director put his touch on the character, it's like you couldn't picture a guy who was better for the role than Michael Keaton for those two movies.
I brought up Tobey Maguire as
Tobey
Spider-Man.
Maguire's
That
Spider
was
Man in the last
that was
episode, yeah.
another thing that still to this day, there's debate about who's the best Spider-Man. Was he the right casting choice? But to me, everything that makes him an unorthodox Spider-Man makes him my favorite Spider-Man. Now, there's some times where you get the perfect guy for the role, and he really is the perfect guy for the role. Christopher Reeve, we won't have a better Superman than him.
If they were to make another live action Punisher movie after Warzone, I would have wanted to see Ray Stevenson back because in my opinion, you don't if you're a Punisher fan, right? Like you established before that you're not anti-Punisher, you just don't think he's particularly that interesting as a character in the comic books. And he's a little generic. And I think for me, I do appreciate some of those things about the character, so having a direct translation on film is something that I would really want. And in my opinion, you could not have nailed it any better than Ray Stevenson. And every time I've watched this, that opinion has been solidified more. I started thinking like, oh yeah, I think he's like the best one. Maybe not perfect, but he's close. And then second time I watched it, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like he's pretty damn good. And the third time I was like, oh no, like he's damn near perfect. And now my fourth watch, which was
Yeah.
this one, he's the perfect choice to play the Punisher.
So, are you going to disagree with me though that he's wasted, that he's not given a movie that matches his caliber? Because
No, I'm
here's the
not.
thing. Okay,
Wait, no, I
this
am going to
is
disagree with you. Actually, yes, I am.
yeah.
Actually, I
Okay,
am going to disagree.
so let me. Okay, great. Let's really dive into this because
Yeah.
this is because Ray Stevenson tricked me into thinking that this might be a good movie because like it's just like the Punisher walks off the comic into this movie. That's how good casting he is. He's a really skilled actor. He's British,
Yep.
and he's the only person without a wacky, ear grating accent in
Dude,
this
I
movie.
just wanna just like quick sidetrack as we talk about Ray Stevenson. Whether you like it or hate it, this movie has over the top wacky accents that are very cartoonish, and in a way, some of them are just bad. There are some characters like our dreadlocked Irish parkour guy who just has one of the worst accents I've ever seen on film. Julie Benz struggles to keep her New York accent throughout the movie. These are things that happen. But Ray Stevenson was the only guy that I was like, no, I buy everything he's saying. Maybe also,
And Wayne Knight, and
yeah,
Wayne Knight as
also Wayne Knight.
Microchip.
Wayne Knight as Microchip because he's just good in everything he does. I
Also,
mean,
great casting. I mean,
also fantastic casting.
better, in my opinion, than the Netflix Microchip.
I will agree with that 100%. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think in as much as people love John Bernthal's emotions as the Punisher, I would say casting wise, this is the best casting for those two characters, whether separate or together. This is the best version of them that I think they could do until we get somebody that comes along that somehow looks more like these two characters than
that's
these two
going to be
guys.
difficult.
Yeah,
That's going to
it
be
is.
a difficult challenge. I honestly think that John Bernthal evokes more Thomas Jane's Punisher than he does a comic book Punisher. It's a very
Yes.
weird thing for me to see people call him the best Punisher, which I'm not going to agree or disagree with. But a lot of those same people are not happy with Thomas Jane's version. And the funny thing is, I think if we had seen Thomas Jane's Punisher in more movies, I think he would have basically ended up being really similar to John Bernthal's Punisher. The only thing is we saw his origin, not his kind of like fully cemented Punisher persona. But anyways, going back to this movie, and here's something that I really realized was wrong with this movie. A movie that is supposed to be just a gonzo, again, grindhouse, shoot 'em up, splatterhouse movie has the Punisher out of commission for like the entire middle act of this movie because he has to do some soul searching. This is the worst movie to try and give the Punisher some sort of whatever you call it, like introspection, or this is not a movie equipped to deal with the ethics of what the Punisher means. This is not a movie that should be doing the Spider-Man 2 thing of, oh, let's put the brakes on the action so that the main character can reflect and everything. I don't know what else to say. This is a movie that fans defend, and I don't know if this is your line of defense, but people say this is just a good time, leave your brain at the door and just like have a fun time with this movie. I can't. The movie literally hits a brick wall from minute 20 to minute 60 of it's just mopiness with the Punisher. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to like really go off on this movie, but I can't think of a movie that shot itself in the foot harder with this than this movie we're talking about right now. And it has always been something that has just boggled the mind for me. It is really one of those things where how do you mess this up?
Well, here's what I'll say. Like, first off, I know you just sort of tackled the defense of like turn your brain off for this movie and you'll have a good time with it. Um, I'm not one of those people that will defend the movie in that way. I do think that there is an aspect of the movie that is a very like there are things about this that are like turn your brain off, have a good time. But I think there are the reason this is a movie that is not for everyone and why it's reaching a cult status and not a status of like a film. Like there are some movies that transcend a cult status that just eventually it breaks out from their little cult knit, the tight knit group of however many people, and it just breaks into modern pop culture of people reevaluating a movie and getting behind it. It doesn't happen very often, but this is not a movie it's ever going to happen with because it's just not made for everybody in that way. Not everybody really wants to go into a movie and have to adjust the fact of whether or not they're turning their brain off. And I think it comes down to the same reason that I have an appreciation for Batman Forever. We talked about that movie on this show, and I think this movie and that movie have a lot of things in common. First of all, you have two insane characters dueling it out for who's more insane, one of which has a messed up face. You have an over the top, cartoonish nature with some dark themes in there. This is much, much darker, obviously, with the ultra violence. But both of them feel like a comic book come to life. The difference is this is the suburban kid on Batman Forever side, the suburban kid who grew up with Batman, animated series in the early '90s and the Tim Burton films, and uses their imagination to make Batman come to life in Batman Forever. On this side is a kid who grew up in like my neighborhood, which is like half suburban, half strange. Just you're exposed to violence a little bit early in your films and your media, and this is the thing that you would come up with. The only issue is it's also geared towards adults, and that's where I think you run into some issues that people have with this, like the one you highlighted there, where there's a lot of action and carnage in this movie, but there is a big chunk of the movie where the Punisher is really kind of questioning himself. I personally don't have an issue with it, and I think the reason I don't have an issue with it is because I was with it by that point. I was with this character by that point. I saw the reason that he was looking into himself for what he does. Meanwhile, the entire city, which pretends to like be anti-Punisher, as soon as they come into contact with him or see the work that he's doing, they realize in a weird way he's sort of right in what he's doing. The reason he's questioning himself is because he just basically, and for lack of a better comparison, he basically just kind of did to this little girl and her mother what ended up happening with him. The most important people in his life were robbed from him, and the same thing happened to them. And he's the reason that happened. He set out to prevent something like this from happening, and now he is the reason that it's happened to somebody else. And while I don't think that this is a movie that can tackle it with the um, I'll say I'll say skill, but I don't have a better word for it. It doesn't have the skill to tackle it the same way that I think a movie would, where it has more weight to it. But because I was with the movie and with the characters by that point in time, I was with it. I was right there. I was like, okay, I get it. I'm with it. You've given me enough action and carnage. I mean, you open with action and carnage. You know what I mean? So I was like, I'm cool with where we are, and I know that that carnage is coming back. Meanwhile, just give me some cool visuals, give me some bad guys doing bad guy shit, and let's flow with it. So that would be my defense. I'm definitely not one of those people who's just gonna be like, "Oh, turn your brain off." You can turn your brain off at a few points in this movie just to have fun. I mean,
You
there are
have
moments
to.
where there are moments where this is basically like I watched a review on YouTube where they talked about this is almost like a comic book movie smashes together with like a late stage Friday the 13th film. And like the Punisher is almost like a slasher in certain parts of this movie, which he is. I mean, he literally cuts a dude's head
And that's a
off
great
the
idea.
first 5 minutes of the movie.
Look, I basically enjoy the first 10 minutes of this movie.
I
I
want to ask
think,
you something if I could. I hate
yeah,
to interrupt you, but
no, do
would
it.
you say that the intro we get to the Punisher, his first scene in that little dining room, is a great scene? Do you like that scene where we're introduced
Oh,
to Ray Stevenson?
his massacre at the mansion.
Yeah, his massacre at the
If
mansion.
if you're gonna rip off Batman Year One, I guess they picked a good scene to do it. Yeah, it's fine. It is. I
Oh,
mean, in the hands of somebody who really knows how to liven this kind of material up, who knows how to put flair and gravitas to mayhem like this, it would be good. I just we have to talk about Dominic West. I mean,
let's
we
talk
have to
about it.
talk about basically, I think, all of the actors besides Ray Stevenson, but specifically we need to um talk about Dominic West. I'm a big fan of The Wire. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to be a meme. Everybody everybody who thinks that there's somebody loves The Wire. I get it. It's a meme at this point. It could be a t-shirt.
It could, yeah. It
I'm a
will be
big
ours
fan of
though.
yeah, I'm a big fan of Dominic West in The Wire. I saw this movie before The Wire, and I just thought that Dominic West must be a terrible actor. This is like the worst first impression for an actor I've ever had. And again,
Wow.
some people will defend this performance, I guess the same way I defended John Travolta. Let me say this. We talked a lot about John Travolta in the last movie
We did.
and how they committed to this very eccentric, borderline goofy villain for the Punisher. This movie thinks that it's doing something cool, and it ain't. This movie thinks it's this movie thinks
Oh
it
no.
has the Joker on its hands, and it doesn't. This is
Hmm.
this is an impotent movie.
Oh my god.
Like nigh everything they go for flounders. And Dominic West, from minute one to minute done, kind of ruins any chance I have of getting into the groove of this movie. You sort of alluded to this, with the Punisher being out of commission, it really becomes a show for the villains. And at that point, you're betting on the villain that you've created. You're betting on the performance being that enthralling. You're betting that you've written such a compelling character. And these guys behind me here, I'm supposed to watch these guys for 2 hours. I was nearly as crazy as Looney Bin Jim by the time this movie ended. I was almost as ravenously out for blood as these two fellas behind me because they drove me to that point, Connor. This is a movie of true depravity. And I want
Oh
to
no.
bounce it back to you, man. I want to hear you talk now about my least favorite thing about this movie, which is the villains, because you didn't like John Travolta and you thought he was inappropriate for the Punisher. Now I want to hear how you go from disliking John Travolta and what he was doing to what these guys are doing.
So I think my opinion about John Travolta in that movie, and then throwing it to Jigsaw in this movie, it's complicated. And the reason that it's complicated is because I think when you have a movie like The Punisher from 2004 and you go with this tone that they're trying to set up, which we said is a problem in the movie. I mean, that's not something that we're going to disagree on. There's some tonal issues in The Punisher from 2004, and there's some tonal issues in this movie to a certain extent. Um, what I think works better in this film that did not work for me with John Travolta, however, is that I felt they committed more so to fitting this just insane. Let's take this character from the comic books and just throw him as this lively, insane fucking villain on our screen. I don't think they thought they had a Joker. I'm going to disagree with you there. I think they were like, let's just try to make Jigsaw have the best chance possible to make an impression on the audience. I have a complaint with Looney Bin Jim. I just do. I think he's laughably bad at some points. I think he's laughably good at some points. I think there are moments in this where he just makes me laugh. And sometimes I don't know whether or not I'm laughing because he's being so awful or because he's being so good at what he's doing. But with Jigsaw, I'm gonna disagree with you on the fact that he's disappointing in this or that it made a bad impression. Do I think it's a great performance? Maybe not. No, I don't think it's. I don't think and nobody's winning an Oscar for this movie. Nor should
That is, I hate it when people say that though. No, nobody's winning an Oscar, but that doesn't give you the excuse to not try. Like, do you see
no, but
efforts
see,
to?
I just don't think that I don't think that they're not trying in this. I think similar to Batman Forever, I think this is the perfect juxtaposition to Two-Face in Batman Forever. I think in that movie, what they tried to do was they tried to create this. Well, I say they. What Tommy Lee Jones tried to do was he tried to create this cartoonish, over the top, but scary villain. And he tried everything he could to do that and to out crazy Jim Carrey. And I think that's where the out crazying Jim Carrey part worked against the movie. Whereas I feel like Dominic West and this other actor are consistently trying to out crazy each other. But I'm entertained by it. This is an entertaining performance for me. It doesn't have to be, a Joker performance because it's not and it's never going to be. But what it's going to be is it's going to be a lot of fun if you get behind it. And by the way, I'm not criticizing anybody who doesn't get behind it. You either vibe with it or you don't vibe with it. It's not a problem either way. My issue with some of the criticism falls in where I feel like some people, I'm not counting you in this, but some people go into this and they do expect a gritty Joker-esque villain if you have somebody that's as over the top as Jigsaw. And I just think over the top comes in different forms, and this version that we got from Dominic West is not fantastic. You're not gonna, again, and he's not winning an Oscar for this, but what I do think it accomplishes is it gives us a creepy at some points villain. I mean, look at him. His performance is obviously the guy's unhinged. You don't know where it's going to go the first time you watch this movie. You think you know, and it ends up going that way. But they give you some misdirections here and there, and I just think is it the perfect thing they should have done? Absolutely not. But does it fit what they're trying to do with the movie? I think so. I like what they went for, and I like what they ended up coming out with.
I admire the fact that you defend this performance. I mean, this is reversed now because I was defending John Travolta.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of weird how that works.
And I'm on an island with that, and I imagine more people are on your side here. I think I would run into more people who enjoy this performance than what John Travolta was doing in that movie. But John Travolta is good at this kind of energy, man. Like, he's a pro at it. He knows people are going to laugh at me maybe, but I think he knows when to dial it back. I think there is an understated, dare I say, there's a level of restraint that he knows, like he knows when to not cross the line, I think. And what I see in this performance, man, I see people who are not taking their job seriously. I see an actor who was doing Emmy award-winning material last week, and now he has to play somebody called Jigsaw in a movie called Punisher Warzone. He's just cutting, he's letting loose. He's not taking it seriously. I'm not saying he has to take it seriously, seriously. I'm not saying he's not the Joker. Jigsaw, I guess, has, I don't know, in the comics, is he this goofy? Is I thought
I
he was
mean,
supposed to be an actual threatening villain for the Punisher.
he is, and I thought he was in this movie.
Really?
I thought he was a much better villain for the Punisher than John Travolta's character in the
Oh,
last movie.
hell no. Hell no.
Yes.
Okay, we are gonna fight.
Yeah.
I'm
This is not that bad war zone, buddy. This is where we're going.
let me throw this at you. There's no more laughable frame of a comic book movie than the sight of these two goons and the other two mooks that they got palling around with them, walking through the backyard of Julie Benz's suburban home, and Looney Bin Jim has his little, what do you call those things?
Yeah, it's like I don't know what they're called, but yeah, I know what you're
His
talking
squeezy stress thing.
about. Yeah.
And Dominic West is wearing a fur coat and a fedora. I and you can't tell me that this is like intentionally camp. I think this is bad. I think
Why can't I tell you it's intentionally camp?
because it's
Let me
so
ask you a
nuts.
question.
I mean, I'm
Let me
not
ask you a
supposed
question.
to laugh at these characters, am I? Aren't I supposed to think that this is a real threat, that there are stakes attached to these
Okay.
characters?
Is the Green Goblin a threat in Spider-Man?
The Green Goblin is notoriously the weakest thing about that first Spider-Man movie. I think.
Do you think he's a threat to Spider-Man?
I think certain scenes feel threatening. I don't think he as a character is a threat.
Okay, I would say that this is handled the same way. There are certain scenes where this guy is a real competent threat to the Punisher, just like the Green Goblin is in Spider-Man. But I'm gonna tell you that this is camp. This movie is. This is what surprises me about your opinion on this. Mm-hmm. This feels like the camp from the Spider-Man movies was thrown into a pot with the ridiculous comic book cartoonish nature of Batman Forever and the insane mind of Rob Zombie, and just stirred. And then you sprinkle some Punisher.
Rob Zombie.
I'm throwing
I knew
Rob
that
Zombie
comparison
in
was
there.
going to come up.
I'm throwing it in there. This has elements of all three of those things. It has elements of what Rob Zombie does on film. It has elements of what the Spider-Man movies did with their campy, over-the-top nature, and it has elements of the cartoonish comic book nature of Batman Forever, all in one film.
Don't you dare use my love of Rob Zombie against me. No, I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because there's a great counterpoint to this. So House of a Thousand Corpses is the campiest movie that Rob Zombie's ever done, probably ever will do. It's a wacky movie, a really good time. I just saw it for Fantastic Fest, and I got to see Rob and Sherry, and even got I have it right here. I got an autographed copy of this movie.
Oh, there we go. I can see it now.
Yeah,
it keeps going in and out, but I can see it. Yeah. I saw the picture already. We follow each other, ladies and gentlemen. I'll let you know we are friends outside of this. So I did see this ahead of time, but yes,
this ain't Siskel and Ebert, man. We're not like planning each other's demise when we're not rolling.
We leave here, and I smoke a cigarette, and I say, "God damn it, I don't know how much I can handle this guy." I tell you.
I mean, maybe after this episode, who knows? Who knows? This is a true test. Let's see if our friendship can survive Punisher Warzone.
If it holds up.
Yeah. No, the reason I bring that movie up is because even though that movie is wildly campy and wildly zany, Otis is still threatening. He works with the movie's tone because he is an over-the-top character, but he was clearly directed to still take the material seriously enough to intimidate the audience. I can take him seriously when he's on screen, and I cannot for the life of me do the same with pretty much any performance in this movie outside Ray Stevenson, to be honest, and Wayne Knight. But this matters. Whether you can take the villain in this movie seriously or not matters.
And I think that's going to be a matter of opinion, because I'm with what they're going for. I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, "Oh, just get it." No, that's a dumb argument. I think that's such a film bro thing to say. You don't understand. But no,
this is like Beau's Afraid. This is like the Beau's Afraid.
Oh my god! Be careful, dude. I don't want our show to get burned down. This is Bo is afraid. You can't say if you like it. You can't say if you don't like it. You just gotta pretend you've never seen it. And I truthfully have never seen it. I have not seen it. I don't plan on seeing it. But
Well, you don't want to
no.
partake in that really productive discourse going on online. You're
Moving
missing
on.
out, son.
Moving on.
Moving on. Yes.
I'm gonna
Very,
actually
very
agree
smart.
with your counterpoint as far as the House of a Thousand Corpses comparison, where I'm going to counterpoint back. I'm gonna give you something to counter what you said there. I don't think there's a direct comparison with a Rob Zombie work per se. What I think this movie does is it brings a Rob Zombie energy. It brings what Rob Zombie brings to his movies. There's a lot of mean-spirited shit in this movie. I mean, look at some of the insane levels of violence that takes place in this. If Rob Zombie would have directed a Punisher movie, I think a lot of this stuff could have been in there. The one
I
place that
think
I
he
do
was
agree with
actually
you,
real quick though. I think he actually was in talks to direct this at some point.
very early on, he liked the idea, but I think something was happening where he couldn't direct it, so he made an original song for this movie called Warzone, which actually
Yeah.
plays in the movie, and it played before the movie, I think, in theaters, and it plays in the end credits when
I mean,
on
that makes a
Blu-ray.
lot of sense, right? He was working with Lionsgate at the time.
He was, and I think, truthfully, I think if he would have directed this movie, more people would have reappraised it by now. I don't know whether it would have come out being better or worse. I'm not going to say whether or not that would have been the case. I would
You're
like to
breaking
think
my
that it would
heart
be
here,
better.
Connor. You're not sure if
Um,
it would have been better or worse.
well, see, because here's the thing,
Better.
right? Like I've already said that I'm in a position to defend this movie. So, obviously if I'm in a position to defend this movie, I don't hate it. So it's hard for me to say like Rob would have been able to nail it because we've never seen him try something like this. That being said, I do think a lot of the things that we see in this are things he would have tried. I will agree with you on the villains. I think Rob's villains, even in his campier movies, are more defined as scary, competent threats. I
And
think
when they're
the
funny, it's
issue
on
that we see
purpose.
here, well, right, and the funny, but I do think that there is a lot of funny on purpose here. There's literally a scene where he and Looney Bin Jim are pitching to a group of gang members to join a super group to take down the Punisher, and they're in front of this like projected American flag, giving a speech
That
like a
is
president would.
that
It's
is
amazing.
I actually do enjoy that scene.
But
It
see,
is
like
too
that's
little too
how I
late.
no, see,
It,
like that's how I feel the tone is of this character from the first time we meet him until the end of the movie. The only time that he breaks from that is during his scenes where they're holding the hostages. That's when he's like he's done fucking around. He's just ready to go, and that's like the last 5 minutes that we see the character.
and how do you know he's super duper scary? Because he shoots the head off of a teddy bear. How can the
No,
Punisher defeat this
no,
force of evil?
Looney
How
Bin
can
Jim
he?
shot the head off a teddy bear.
Oh, my bad. My bad.
Jigsaw shot Wayne Knight in the head, shot Microchip in the head, which is a moment that, truthfully, the first time I watched this, I was like, they're not killing him. Like, I thought this movie was going to be a spiritual follow-up to Batman Forever, because I was like, he's gonna save them both. I mean, that's what the hero does. But he's just like, no, I know he's gonna shoot him in the head,
He
but I can
doesn't
save this
seem
kid.
he doesn't seem that broken up about it to me. The Punisher.
Really? See, I want to throw this at you because I saw this a lot in reviews. I want to ask you about this. I felt that Ray Stevenson did a great job of portraying any emotion that he felt throughout the movie in a very subtle manner. That's what the Punisher, I feel, is supposed to be. I mean, there's only one part where I don't think he's very subtle, but it's when he's completely alone, when he's visiting the grave of his family.
That's
But
fine.
throughout the rest of the movie, I see everything he's feeling in every scene. And you don't have to rely on just the lighting. Like in the scenes where he's talking to the little girl, you can see the sadness in his eyes. In the scenes where he's fighting villains, or on his way to kill more people, you see the calculated nature in his eyes. You see everything through his face in the movie without him doing a whole lot, which is why
He's
I
really
like
good.
him so much.
He's really good. I just feel like the movie itself kind of forgot about Microchip as soon as he was dead. I feel like he was very underused,
I will
pretty
agree with you
awkwardly
on
used.
underused. I wouldn't agree on awkwardly, but I would agree that he is underutilized in this movie. They should have had more scenes. I think I don't know if they just couldn't get him. Like maybe he was just like not doing a whole lot of acting around this time, and just you couldn't get him very long. I don't know. I think he was the perfect choice. So if this is all you could get from him, like power to you. But I will agree with you. I think he is underused. We should have had more scenes of their dynamic together, because I did really like that scene where, like, he tells the Punisher why he needs to keep doing this and why this is different and he can't go away, and the Punisher still walks out, and then he does the 3, 2, 1 and he walks right back through the door. It shows they have a built relationship, but it does
You get
decrease the weight a
moments.
little
You
bit.
get
Yeah,
moments. Yeah.
it decreases the weight a little bit of when you see him get shot, because there was less of it in the movie. Maybe it would have helped for the movie to be a little bit longer to have that in there, but I don't think it would have reached, I don't think it would have the potential to reach as many people if it was as long as Punisher 2004, which is a complaint that we had a little bit. I mean, it goes on a little long. This does not overstay its welcome. Dude, this movie's like an hour and 40 minutes long. This does not overstay its welcome.
Roger Ebert once said that no good movie is too long and no bad movie is too short.
Oh my God.
That's all I'll say about that.
Roger Ebert. Okay. I actually have something to say about him a little bit later, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay, cool.
About something he said about this movie, by the way. I'm not like gonna drop a bomb on Roger Ebert.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is like, oh man, are we
no, I have no ill will towards Roger Ebert. I think he's had some great opinions. I think he's had some shitty opinions. I think he's what every critic is. He's just a guy who writes about movies and talks about his opinion.
He's my favorite critic. He embodies everything I love about film criticism, including the right and the clout to have unbelievably bad takes.
Oh no, I mean, look,
takes that nobody else would get away with, but Roger Ebert, man, Pulitzer Prize winning Roger Ebert, he can shit on Reservoir Dogs all he wants. He can prop up a Cop and a Half all he wants. He's a king. He's a goat. So moving
I'll agree
on
with you.
Yeah, moving on. Let's see if we can agree on this. Let's see if we can patch things up. Okay. So we've talked about the villains enough. And we're just going to have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
The rest of the cast, particularly Martin Soap, a character from the comics, a character who I didn't even like in the comics. And now he's here. He's here in this cartoony landscape that this movie lives in. And they got the most feckle actor in the world to play this motherfucker. And there's this weird thing that this movie's doing where it thinks it's cute. This movie thinks of itself as being something like, I don't know. I mean, I think they're trying to merge the violence of a Grindhouse movie with the humor and charm of like those early Batman movies, I guess.
I think with this character specifically, I would completely agree with you, because I kept thinking of the reporter from Batman 1989. I mean, like,
I didn't know that
in the worst way. And
I didn't know that a poor man's Robert Wool could exist, but here he is.
Dash Mihawk is the poor man. No, but like seriously, I mean, like I don't. The character does not take away from the movie for me. It just doesn't. I think he's inconsequential. I think he delivers a few funny moments, like when they're in the car and Frank's just like, "Let me go," and he's just like, "Oh, like letting you out. I could give you tips. I could do all this stuff, but letting you out of a cop car, like I can." And then he's just like, "All right, fine," and he gives it to him. The last scene of the movie, I think, is great with him, where he's just this weaselly little guy that's like, "Frank, please help me." I think that's funny. Everything else, though, does not work. He is absolutely a carbon copy of the reporter from Batman '89, and the copy machine they were using was out of whack and just could not produce a good enough copy, because it's degraded in quality pretty heavily. That is one thing I will absolutely agree with you on, with his character in particular.
Okay, that scene you just brought up, it's funny, we've been talking about House of a Thousand Corpses. That's literally just a ripoff of the iconic opening from that movie. Motherfucker, I got blood over my damn clown suit. It's just that moment. It's just that beat. But instead of putting it at the beginning, they put it at the end.
I want to say this, though. This might be that shot of the Punisher at the top of the stairs with the Jesus saves neon sign behind him, maybe one of the coolest shots I've ever seen in a comic book movie. And I think, oh no, well, yeah, I think it was probably one of the coolest shots I've ever seen in a comic book movie. And I just want to throw appreciation to that. I will agree that that is a very similar beat to House of a Thousand Corpses. Where he says, like, what does he say? Like, oh, I've got brains on my shoe, or his brains are all over my shoe, something like that. I don't know. I like that moment.
Come on, Frank, you've got brains all over my
there you go.
loafers.
I again, I don't like a lot that the character gives us, but I think there were two moments where I did enjoy the character. It was in the car with Frank when he's handcuffed, and this last scene. Everything else did not work. I completely agree with you 100%. It was a bad imitation of Batman 89. And I think with that character, they tried too hard to replicate that, and they just failed.
Yeah. So let's also kind of touch on two things that I think are critical to understanding this movie. One thing I appreciate about it, and another thing really doesn't work for me.
Okay.
The visual style of this movie that they were going for, again, on paper, this is something that really made me want to like this movie. Look, there are some moments where I do think they actually hit the mark, where I think this movie does really have style, where it really does have swagger. I actually really like that scene in the church. Just in general, I think that's, they give Ray Stevenson really a chance to shine. I think it actually has the best dialogue, the best exchange, the line I remember from this. And that's the other thing, just the set design and the lighting. I don't know any church that lights itself like a strip club, but hey, it works for the movie.
Yeah,
I do too. But the thing is, like, wanting to look cool is different than looking cool. And I'm just not sure if this production was up to par with the assignment that they had given themselves. I don't think that this movie is a polished product. I think the editing is awkward and janky. I think they rely on things like slow motion way too often, especially in the action scenes. And the CGI blood is the awkward is awkward handily. That's perfect. Is handled awkwardly. So let me bounce that back to you, Connor. Why am I wrong?
Well, I'm going to agree with you on a few things. And then I want to sort of take it and transition that into a complaint that I do have about this movie. And I want to say, first off, the CGI, bad choice. I think they could have easily accomplished everything they did with CGI. Well, to an extent. I think like some of it doesn't look terrible, like the head getting cut off is okay. Some of the other stuff is there's okay instances of it, but when it's bad, it's bad. And I can't really defend that. We don't usually like to shit on CGI. I'm not gonna say that it's a takeaway. Even some of the bad moments, like there's this moment where this guy's parkouring from one building to another, and mid flip he gets exploded by a like a grenade launcher.
Very funny moment.
Very funny moment. Very funny. I think the awkward CGI kind of works for that moment, but a lot of the other moments it's supposed to work for it. It works against it. I don't want to spend too much time on that. What I do want to spend time on though is the visual presence that this movie has. Because on one hand, I agree with you. I think it's there's a lot of things, and this is sort of where some of that Rob Zombie energy comes from. There's a lot of like these neon lights, the use of this like really, it's a dark lit scene, but our characters are well lit, and we have these bright lights behind them that evoke color, and different scenes have different colors based on the emotion that they're supposed to portray. Like, there's these dark yellowish scenes every time like nothing's really happening. When it's supposed to be a good scene, there's like a blue lighting. When there's a bad scene, it's got red lighting. I get what they were going for in those senses, and I think a lot of that, like the set design and the lighting on set, really worked towards this movie to be visually stunning, and there's moments in this that are visually stunning. The issue, I think, comes in during the editing process, when they're doing some of the color grading and when they're doing some of the things that put this movie together from an editing standpoint. This is where some of the movie does fail for me. I mean, when you take some of these shots that are just beautiful and you just up the yellow and you sepia the screen, it's like it doesn't work for the visual style that they were going for. And looking at set photos, there were times where they sort of put both of those elements on screen, and I think they did work when they were on screen together. But when it was clear that the editing room had a hand in how the movie looked, it took away from the what I think was amazing set design, um, that was working for the visual presence through most of the movie. Um, but it doesn't just fail it with how it looks with the editing. I mean, there are some scenes that are just edited very sloppily. This movie has an issue with passage of time. You just kind of realize at one point that like days have gone by and it just feels like our characters are just still on the same day, and it's because the editing doesn't do enough to let you know that time is passing. And it makes everything seem very quick and rushed at certain parts. And while I do think that it doesn't completely take away from my experience, it's a problem I have that does take the star rating down a little bit. It's there's really no excuse for it. They just didn't do well. I think the editors of this movie should have reevaluated.
That's what the subtitle of this movie should have been.
Oh my god,
Punisher. There's no excuse for it.
Oh Jesus.
Cool. Now let's talk about something that really riles me up. And this is going to rile me up not just because of this movie, because of the Punisher character. I've alluded to this before. The Punisher has been co-opted by a group of shitheads in this country. And I'm not going to take that out as a factor whenever I consume Punisher media. I think that is asinine. Cultural context matters, connotation matters. I'm not going to blame the people who created the Punisher. It's just a fact of the matter. If a guy approaches me and he's wearing the Punisher skull logo, I'm inclined to cross the street. You get me? And this movie really embellishes and basically condones every kind of nasty social value that goes with the Punisher character. This is an extremely anti-civic rights movie. The Punisher, his greatest foe is evil mobsters. It's corrupt bureaucracy. It's and his greatest aid, his allies are the people who think the justice system is weak and are more than happy to have him go around killing people without due process. And it's a movie that really relishes in this. And that's not a problem I had with the Thomas Jane version. And it's actually something that I think the Dolph Lundgren version approaches quite well. If you want to hear our thoughts on that, you can go check out the previous entry. So I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that libtard that has to rain on people's parade. People say, leave your brain at the door. But the fact of the matter is, every single movie has something to say, whether or not they know it, whether or not they realize it. And this is an ugly movie to me in that department. Do you care to comment on that? Or is this something that, is this something that's, in your opinion, not even worth bringing up in a discussion about this movie?
I mean, I think anytime you have a movie that discussion evokes, I think it's not wrong to bring that up. I think it's one of those things where it's a dicey subject for anybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's either going to bother you or it's not. And there are times where I think there is a responsibility that you have as a filmmaker when handling some material. I think it's all about how you handle it. For me, I think this movie handled it in a very over-the-top, violent, cartoonish way that worked. I don't think it crossed the line for me personally. I do think that it's hard with modern knowledge about what the symbol's used for and what it can represent in certain, corners of of the country or the world. But it's hard for me to put my brain there when consuming a movie that's just as outlandish as this one. So it does not absolve the movie of a responsibility, but it makes it more dicey for me to have an opinion in that way, because honestly, it's not something that bugged me in this case. But I think it's a worthy conversation to have anytime that's something that it could be brought up. I think there's an extreme, like you said, there's a point like where you just have to be like, guys, it's a movie. Like, it's a movie. But there's also responsibility that comes with some of that. So, while I don't think you should, be looking at Finding Nemo saying how irresponsible it is because this, that, and that, like, or Lilo and Stitch because she climbs into a washing machine. It's like there's a certain point where you just have to realize like maybe we should leave that conversation at the door. I don't think this is one of those movies, but it's something that I personally don't have an opinion on for this film. So yeah, I worthy conversation for sure. But I don't have much more to contribute to it.
Yeah, very wise, very wise. I'll take the hit, man. I'll take the
Oh no,
hit.
and that's not even something that like if I had an opinion on it, I'd be happy to say it too. I just there are some times where it does bug me. I think there are movies that are gratuitous with it or that are that go over the top to give you a message that from either side of the coin I think is an irresponsible thing to do. It's why I have a disconnection with a lot of movies, maybe even in some franchises that I do enjoy.
I don't know. I
So
mean, I think this
no.
is a weird case for me where if this movie is going to challenge the Punisher, like his moral code, if it's going to ask if what the Punisher is doing is right, you're asking me to take it seriously, right? I mean, again, this isn't turn your brain off. I mean, the screenwriters, for better or for worse, are asking these questions. And by the end of the movie, all I can think of is they're saying, yes, what the Punisher is doing is right. We need a guy like the Punisher. Uh, we need him more than we need, laws. He's better than the inept and corrupt bureaucrats we see in this movie, or the incompetent cops we see in this movie. It's a weird thing for me. Again, I feel like they did invite this. You'll notice I didn't really have anything to say about this in the Thomas Jane version because that felt like a very personal story. There is some like nod to the idea that a guy like the Punisher needs to exist because the system is incompetent. I have a lot of problems with the justice system myself, and I'm open to what that movie did. But what this movie does to me is take it a step further and go out of its way to validate the Punisher to the point where it feels like a power fantasy for people who I don't want to have power. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, you'll notice that I have an Astros cap and not a MAGA one, and that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I'll just throw one thing in there, and I will say I think the just like if the one thing I will say about you said that it wasn't really as present in the last movie. I think part of that is because of the narrative of the story that they gave you in
Mhm.
Punisher '04. But I think like the ending of the Punisher '04 is very much what you described because he's about to go off and it's no longer a revenge story anymore. He's about to be what Ray Stevenson is. He's about to go out. He's not getting revenge anymore. He's not punishing those who who deserve it for what they did to him and his family anymore. After that, he leaves to go kill other people. And he says it at the end of the movie about how he's going to go kill other people who are like this. So
To be
he is
fair,
going to
Thomas,
become what Ray Stevenson was.
let me I see your point, and let me say this. I think Thomas Jane's Punisher is much more methodical and displays a lot more forethought about these things. I don't believe that Thomas Jane is a man. I mean, his version of Frank Castle. I don't know what Thomas Jane thinks about any of this, but his
Yeah.
version of Frank Castle is not a man who gets carried away by the power of being a vigilante. There's something about that movie that I liked, and I wanted to bring it up last time, but much like that movie, our podcast was running way too long. But he very notably gives the law enforcement a chance to do what they're supposed to do to bring his would-be killers to justice. He gives them like 6 months, and then he confronts them publicly. And when they don't have anything to tell him, when it's clear that they can't or won't do anything, that's when he takes matters into his own hands. I mean, this is a Punisher who feels like anointed to do a one-man war against crime. And when you're doing a war, you don't have to follow rules or social rules the same way. He kills indiscriminately. He has completely lost touch with regular people. And we see it in this movie. His approach gets innocent people killed. and I don't know how that
Well,
experience
an
affected
innocent person
him.
killed. Well, no, I guess two.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I mean, if you want to count Newman's mom, Newman. I'm
Also,
sorry, Wayne Knight's
ooh,
mom,
no, let's call him
microchips
Newman.
mom.
I like
Yeah,
that.
Newman's mom. But I think. Well, but see, I would argue on the other side of that that like even though this is not a follow up to Thomas Jane's movie, um, I think if we would have seen the Punisher that got the revenge on the people, Ray Stevenson's version, who got the revenge because let's be real, they talk about it being punishment. It's revenge. He's getting revenge. It's a revenge movie. If we would have gotten to see that side, I think we would be having a different discussion about the movie. But I think the point that we're at in this story is like this is a guy who's been doing this for a long time. I mean, we see that there's a point in time where he asks like, you know, I'm gonna get started. Which one of these has the Punisher files in it for the Punisher murders? And he's like, look around, and there's like hundreds of boxes of these things. So the guy's been at it for a minute. So we're at a different point in his story. I think if we would have gotten a sequel for Thomas Jane, I don't see how they could have given us something that wasn't this because that's how they ended off. They ended off with him going out to sort of become this. He no longer has the trust in the law that he had. There is a point in this movie where I can appreciate it because he does welcome the help of officers, but I can see your point where he does say like, okay, well, you know, I'm accepting your help because we're doing this my way, and then at
Well,
the end of the day, he knocks the dude out so he can do it on his own. I don't know how much of that is telling the story of this guy feels responsible for, so he's going to be the one to finish it, and how much of it is this macho man bravado of I'm the vigilante. But I do think there's an argument for both of those cases. And I do think there's an argument for the case of if you would have continued Thomas Jane's story past his initial revenge point, it'd be hard to then do another revenge story without doing something similar to what we see here. His vengeance is only for the fact that he is trying to protect people, even though he goes about it in a way that uh, has two sides of an argument of how he's doing it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I would agree with you though. I do think the Punisher 2004, up until the point of literally the last seconds of the movie, it doesn't have the same energy, and you're absolutely correct on that.
yeah, it's hard for me to imagine Thomas Jane's Punisher evolving into Ray Stevenson's Punisher, right?
Well,
I mean,
it was hard to picture a sequel for me. Like when you were talking about wanting to see him again, I couldn't picture it because it's a very different version of that character. He has different motivations than the Punisher has, which is a big issue that the comic book fans really have with it. It's hard
I
to think
think
about
I
how
don't know. I
what
feel
they could have
like
done with that.
I think there would have been a way. I really imagined something like a Man with No Name trilogy sort of vibe where he goes from town to town. He sees what the problem is, and he doesn't just shoot first, ask questions later. He plans and he makes allegiances, and I don't know. I
Uses a
just see
lot of
him as
landmines.
that's another problem with this movie. Where are the landmines? The Punisher's most iconic weapon is nowhere in this
Punisher
movie.
Warzone has a deep lack of landmines. No, yeah, I mean,
Okay, landmines are to the Punisher what the machete is to Jason. Okay, let's.
well, you know, let's talk about something that our conversation just sort of brought up, though. I want to ask you about the action and the carnage in this movie. Not so much the story side of it, just the what we see from an action side. Like if you watch a John Wick movie, you know you're going to see some kick-ass fight scenes. You're going to see some cool shootouts. You're going to see some
Mhm.
probably car chases or fucking riding horses through the city, whatever it is. In this movie, I expected more carnage and action than I got in 2004. Even though I was not disappointed with how much we got. I liked it. I said that in our discussion. I like to think in this one that they just took it to a whole new level, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. Do you think they took it too far? Do you think it works for the movie? What are your thoughts on the carnage and action that we get in Punisher
There's
Warzone?
nothing as memorable to me as the fight scene with the Russian from 2004. There's nothing that even tries to be as memorable. It's sort of what I alluded to that if it's really just sequence after sequence of the Punisher getting into a shootout, for me it starts to feel tedious, especially when I don't think the choreography or the construction of these sequences are anything to write home about. I think it borderlines on cheese a lot. This seems to be an iconic moment for some. I think him getting on that chandelier and spinning around looks silly.
Oh, I like that moment. I like that one.
It. It seems very impractical to me.
I mean, look, there are things in all of these movies I think that are impractical, but I don't know. I thought it was a cool looking moment. I thought that was pretty iconic. I thought the rocket launcher to the guy jumping over the building was iconic. I thought the last shootout was pretty cool, man. Like honestly, like when he's going through the building clearing these people out, I think the way they went about getting that started was pretty creative. Like, hey, let's find the guy who has a reason to want revenge against these gangsters to help us out. Let's go to the other side of this thing and like play their game. They want to recruit all these other gangs to take out the Punisher. Well, the Punisher can then get the Punisher
Mm.
doesn't really do it, but his side can have something like that as well. And then he gets into the building and he's just cold and calculated. He's taking these people out. He's hearing
He
them. He's coming
definitely,
up with a plan. I
he
loved it.
definitely he approaches it like a Marine for sure,
He
and
does, yeah. I
I
think
think
they say
it's
he was a special forces trainer or some special
yeah,
forces combat trainer or something like
it's
that.
really fine. I don't have any. I do I guess have something negative to say about the action, which I'm shocked at how scaled down some of it felt in the middle act. Like
I'll agree
that
with
whole
that.
s- that whole sequence in the house, it seems like that's where some kind of major action beat should go, but all we get is the Punisher very easily taking out these two mooks, right? He punches the one kid in the face, which is a funny moment.
Dude, that's a great moment. I love that so much. He punches right through that fucker's face. This is amazing. It's like a
Yeah,
horror movie kill.
it is. But by that point, you haven't seen a major action scene with this character in a really long time, and I felt starved for something more spectacular, like the opening promised. I don't think the opening set the right tone for this movie. I mean, other than that fight scene at the mansion and a little bit at that mill, I feel like this movie is like really anemic when it comes to shootouts.
I actually kind of like the way that they structured it. I like the fact. Well, first of all, I like the fact that this isn't just shootout after shootout. You know what I mean? I like the fact that they have the story beats in there, whether or not you connect with them. I like the fact that this isn't just the Punisher gets in a shootout here and then he goes over here and gets in a shootout here. Um,
But the
but
shootouts are the only thing to me that feel like very well thought out. Like
that's
everything
fair.
else, to me, like he very easily dispatches of people and very lacking intention for me.
And that's a fair discussion. I think that also kind of comes down to your feelings on the Punisher character because that's very much kind of what he is. That you don't see it as commonly in the comic books where the Punisher is
Mm.
real down and out. A lot of his turmoil in this is decisions that he has to make, and it's really just kind of one major decision. I mean, he has the issues with his way of doing things after an innocent person gets killed. That's not what he's about, and the fact that he did that is something that he questions now, and also the fact that he now is in a situation where he has this person who's the
Mm.
closest person in the world to him, and on the other side, innocent people, and technically they're both innocent, but the innocence of the child kind of prevails, and he has to make that difficult choice. But when you talk about the action, like I will agree with you. I think there's an issue where nothing in this movie is as well done as the fight scene with the Russian, but I think this movie delivers more on the type of action that the Punisher would want to give us. I said in the 2004 video that we talked about, I said that I think the perfect Punisher movie is similar to Dread, the movie Dread. And I think this was a step towards that. I just think there was too much of the cartoonish stuff to say definitively like, "Oh yeah, this went like the Dread route." Um I do think there is a perfect Punisher film in going that route. Hey, Marvel, let me do it. Come on, let me do it. Let me make a Punisher movie. I'll make a great Punisher movie. I'll pick a great actor. I'll do everything you want. To I'll make you some money, but
I'm
just
sure
give
you'll
me
do much better than Lexi Alexander.
$15 million. Oh man. See, I'm not gonna shit on Lexi Alexander. I watched interviews of her talking about her intentions with the movie, and I actually appreciate it. Well, whether or not she should be going on Twitter and answering people who don't like her work, I will I will point to my thoughts in the last video, but I'm not gonna shit on her direction in this. Honestly, I think I I got what she was trying to do. She used a lot of the same language, and I don't know if it was by design. I don't know if it was by accident, but a lot of the same language that Joel Schumacher used when talking about Batman Forever. Like, this is a comic book movie. We're making a. It's almost like she was referring to it as taking a comic book and throwing it on the screen. And I cannot definitively say that she didn't accomplish that. I just can't say it because that's what she did.
There's doing that right and there's doing that well. Look, okay, Sam Raimi did the exact same thing with Spider-Man. Big hit, huge hit. You won't get me to say a bad word about what Sam Raimi did there.
I'm surprised you don't have a Spider-Man tattoo, a Sam Raimi Spider-Man tattoo.
I don't get tattoos. If I did get tattoos, that'd probably be right up there. You know,
Spider-Man 2 across the top of your back. I'll pay for that if you get that.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'll get a tramp stamp.
Yes. Oh my God, I will pay for it. I swear to God.
Please spend your money more wisely. So, look, when you see somebody do it with such precision and when you see somebody do it as well as that, it's very hard for me to hear like the Joel Schumacher thing and like give that a pass, because doing the comic book movie approach of let's put a comic book on screen, that can be done well and that can be done badly. And Joel Schumacher is a guy who did it pretty badly, I thought. And I mean, Batman Forever is a mixed bag, but I mean, his approach, I think, proved to be disastrous. I mean, and I think Lexi Alexander learned the worst things from those Joel Schumacher movies.
I'm gonna have to disagree with that. There, here's why though. I guess I'm gonna pose a question. And I'm going to pose the question by first bringing up something that Roger Ebert said about this movie. I was going to wait till my final verdict to bring it up because I just had something I wanted to throw in about it, but I think this is a good time for me to say it. A direct quote from him when talking about the Punisher Warzone was, he called this one of the best made bad movies I've ever seen. That's what he said. Direct quote. I think it's just I've seen, but whatever it may be. That's something that he said about this movie. I think on a technical level, there's a lot of things that were really well done about the making of this movie. So I want to ask you, as somebody who usually, like in these reviews, if you watch reviews, in these videos, podcasts, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of things that normally I think you would appreciate that was done in this movie that you don't appreciate as much with the material that we're given. And I'm curious if that's due to the execution or your feelings on the Punisher character in directing it in that way. Taking a character and literally pasting him onto the screen. How much of that doesn't work from a perspective of that being done as opposed to what Lexi Alexander was able to do with the movie itself?
Oh, it's about execution for me here.
Okay.
I mean, I'm on record saying I really wanted to like this movie because I thought the direction they went was so cool on paper. No, it's all about execution, man. And that's sort of why I am pinning it on Lexi Alexander, because your job as the director isn't just to have cool ideas, it's to know how to bring that to life, it's to know how to direct other people to bring your vision to the screen. And I think she had a cool idea. And maybe if she had done a couple more movies, if this was later into her career, she could have been seasoned enough to do it. But for whatever the reason, either it wasn't a good match for her, or because I've never seen any other movie that she's done. Either wasn't a good match for her, but she wasn't there. Like she was talented enough to have the idea, you know what I mean? But she wasn't seasoned enough to do it. You know, there like Sam Raimi had been working as a director for over 20 years by the time he did Spider-Man. And he had worked with all different kinds of budgets. He'd worked with high profile actors. He'd been around the block. You know, it was not, I think Punisher Warzone is Lexi's second movie.
It's her second major film. Yeah.
Second major film.
Yeah.
Because she's been doing television work ever since.
Yes. Yeah. The Green Street Hooligans was her first major film. She hasn't done a major movie afterwards. She only has one other film on her letterbox that's like a full movie from what I can tell. And it's a movie called Lifted, which has a 3.0 rating. It doesn't look like many people have seen it. Came out in 2010. So that was her follow-up to this one.
And hey, I mean, I say that, but Joel Schumacher had also been a seasoned director. He had done The Lost Boys. He did St. Elmo's Fire, a couple other notable movies. Falling Down, I think, would have been his most critically acclaimed for sure. And, you know, I think sometimes a project can bring out the worst qualities of a director. And that might be the case here. Again, I'm not familiar with her work. I can't speculate too much. But when I say it's all about execution, I mean it. I think there's a kick-ass version of this movie out there, and I wished I got to see it. But that movie would not have this performance by Dominic West. It wouldn't have a second act that goes nowhere and meanders. It would have um it would be it would have the editing and cinematography that you would hope for from a major production like this. And I don't mean to sound mean. It's hard making a movie. I've never done anything to this caliber, and I would be very intimidated if somebody handed me like what $20 million to make a Punisher movie. But the reality is what we have on screen, and what we have on screen it just isn't there.
And that's fair, and that's why I wanted to make sure I got that distinction from you. And that's fair. And some of those things we'll agree to disagree on for sure. I mean, the execution's either going to work for you or it's not, and that's the case in every movie. Some people, the things that you think may be, well done, something that I might take and say, yeah, I think that was really awesome. That might be the worst thing you've ever seen on on your television screen. I don't know if that's the case here, but I do want to ask you about two things that the audience considers two of the worst things. We touched on one of them a little bit, and I want to just sort of bring it back up here because there are characters we haven't touched on with this complaint. And I just want to see kind of the direction that conversation goes. We don't have to necessarily call anybody out for this, but I think an overall complaint is that everybody in the movie on the cast, with the exception of maybe Ray Stevenson and Wayne Knight, are not up to par for the acting. Every one of them.
Yes.
You agree with that criticism across the
Yes.
board? Okay.
I do. I like the guy playing Budiansky.
Okay, see, I wanted to ask you about that because he is a common complaint about his terrible American accent in this, which I will agree with. It's not a good American accent, but I think he brings a good presence to the movie.
I've heard worse. I wish they had gotten Lance Reddick so we could have had
Oh
a
man, that would
real
have been cool.
The Wire reunion.
That would have been
You
very
know,
cool. I will agree with that. Lance Reddick, R.I.P.,
rest in
is a
peace.
gem. Is a fucking gem. I think that I mean it's interesting because when I think of Colin Salmon, who was in this movie, by the way, second appearance on this show, he was in Alien versus Predator as well. Um, when I think about him, I think of like the early 2000s. You know what I mean? Like that seemed to be his point in time to shine. He was in Resident Evil. He was in Alien versus Predator. He was in a couple of movies around that time that did very well, and he played the same character basically. And he kind of plays the same character in this. He's given a little bit more with like his range of emotions. There's this really funny scene where he's going to arrest one of Jigsaw's goons, and the Punisher just explodes his head with a shotgun, and he kind of just yells, "God damn it, Castle!" And he's able to kind of play into that funny nature of that just grotesque moment. Um, he's given a little bit more to play with. But one of the people that I want to ask you about, who I think I have like a very love-hate relationship with overall, I think she's in a terrible movie that I bought just because Danielle Harris was in it, called Havenhurst. Um, I spent money on that thing, and I hope some of it went to Danielle Harris because I wasted it if not. But here's what I'll say. Julie Benz plays our mother in this movie, the mother of the little girl that
She
loses her
certainly
father.
does.
And I don't want to say that she's a bad actress because I don't think she is a bad actress. I think she's like, I mean, she's a good crier. I think her emotions are pretty good, but it feels like she just doesn't. There's something missing about her. Am I crazy about that? Like, there feels like there's something missing in her performance, and I can't pinpoint. I mean, obviously the accent is grotesque, but what else am I missing with her that's causing
Oh
it to
man,
not
there's just
connect?
nothing to her performance and to her character other than the constant crying face that she makes. That's the only thing she's asked to do. I mean, this is a sausage fest of a movie, more so than 2004, who I thought, I thought Mystique was brought something really valuable to that movie and to that cast. That cast soul, Frank cast soul.
I think that's the worst one you've ever done on the show.
And it won't be the worst one by the time we're done.
Oh man. By the way, any of these, I am constantly looking for an opportunity to put on a t-shirt, so be careful what you say. Because I will put it on a shirt.
If you want to put Frank cast ...
Nobody's buying that thing. I'll make it just to send you one. Yeah, I'll make it just to send you one.
That'll be a good Christmas present. There's really nothing though to Julie Benz's performance. She's a fine actress. She was fine in Saw 5.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. Like, that's why I was kind of confused about this, is because she's been in things before where she's not awful, like Rambo. She was in Rambo. That came out, I'm pretty sure, the same year as this, right? 2008? Yeah. She was in Rambo, and I don't think she's terrible in Rambo. It's just, I don't know, man. I wanted to feel more for her character other than the circumstance. I think that's what really makes a great performance in a movie for a sympathetic character, is that you don't just feel bad because of what happened to them. You feel bad because you feel what they're feeling. And I don't know that I felt what she was feeling throughout this. It could be up to the editing. I mean, her scenes are chopped up a little bit. She doesn't have a whole lot to do. So maybe that's where some of that comes from. But I certainly don't think she's a bad actress. I don't think her performance is that awful in this. I don't think it's amazing. But that's what I guess I want to ask you is, but we talked about how you feel about Dominic West and how you feel. I don't know the actor's name who plays Looney Bin Jim.
Doug Hutchinson.
There we go. And we talked about their performances. And Dash Mihawk, who plays Martin Soap. But was there anybody else that stood out to you as a bad actor in this movie that would put the acting in a terrible category?
God, who's the guy who plays the ex-con that kind of partners up with the Punisher?
Yeah.
Mr. Less Than 5 minutes
Carlos
of screen
Gonzalez
time.
Villo. His name is Carlos Gonzalez Villo, and he plays a character named Carlos.
Okay.
He's also in Max Payne, if you needed to know that.
I don't think he's great.
Do you do?
I need that. Makes
avoid
so much
Max
sense.
Payne now.
Max Payne is one of the most you must avoid this movies.
I will not defend
2000s.
Max Payne. No, I will not defend Max Payne.
Good.
I can't go there. But no, I don't think he's great. Do you think he's like awful, or do you think?
I guess I don't think he's awful. I think
he just doesn't leave an impression. I mean,
it's such a weird non-character, and it's one of those things where, oh, cool, the Punisher is working with an ex-con. Where's this going to go? Nowhere.
I will agree with you. That one goes kind of nowhere. I do actually appreciate his acting after he gets like axed to death, and then he kind of the Punisher shows up and he's like, "Please don't let me die like this. Please don't let me die like this." I was like, "Oh, like I can." This is what I'm talking about. What I didn't get from Julie Benz. I feel what this character is feeling, and that's making me feel bad for them. It's not just the fact that they were beaten with an axe.
But look, we've been talking about this movie for over an hour and a half, and I just remembered that he was a character.
I mean, no, he does nothing. I mean, besides that moment, he has nothing to take another case of a terrible accent in this movie from this guy. That's one thing that I will absolutely agree with the audience on. I grouped it in with the acting complaint, but the accents are, if they're not over the top, they're bad. And if they're and the bad ones are also over the top. I don't think Dominic West is terrible. His accent's very over the top, but I don't think it's bad. Almost everybody else, though, has a very bad.
His name's Jim,
fake.
Not Looney Bin Jim, not LBJ,
not
Jim.
LBJ, Jim. But
you
yeah,
look fantastic, brother.
I love that. I love that line. Honestly, I love it. It's amazing.
I'm gonna get my applesauce back.
Well, that leads me to the next huge complaint I saw in every single negative review I read that had more than 5 words in it, and that was the dialogue. Now,
yummy, yummy, yummy in my tummy. I think
Oh
I
my
might,
god.
from this point on, just quote these motherfuckers for the rest of the review.
Honestly, you know what's funny is like, is the dialogue like the greatest that I've ever heard in a movie? No. Is it the worst? No. But if, fuck, man, if it ain't memorable, um, I don't know what is. Good or bad, I don't care. I remember this movie. I remember some of the things that were said. I remember the fact that Dominic West said things with the most outlandish accent, just most New York mobster accent I've ever heard in a movie. Um, it's just it's a non-factor for me when I'm talking about my issues and my good things about this movie, because I know some of that dialogue is just bad. But I will give it credit for one thing. Nothing made me cringe as much as I cringed at the love scenes in Punisher '04, where they're on the beach and they're like, "Oh, I love you so much, baby." All that stuff, that was awful. Nothing was that bad in this. But nothing was as good as some of the best lines of dialogue from Punisher '04. That's my take on the dialogue. Where do you land? Stop thinking of a quote to, to put here. Oh man. You're gonna
If I
get
could
your
only get my
applesauce
hands on
back.
God. Okay. I just disagree, man. Yes, this is absolutely cringier than the Punisher
Oh,
04.
no, I wouldn't say that at all.
I'm sorry, man. I can't cope. I know that there's something about cringy love scenes that does tend to really give me goosebumps. Like it does really elicit like a very kind of allergic reaction from me.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine writing down this dialogue and turning this in. Yes, this is your script. Can you pay me now for my good work?
Oh man. I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't do it. I think but that's the thing, right? Like I think this movie's dialogue is just it's just fine. Okay? It's just fine. I think
It
the
ain't just
worst.
fine.
No,
It ain't
because
just
like
fine.
I don't consider the worst dialogue in this to be the worst dialogue in a comic book movie. I don't consider it to be the worst dialogue even in the Punisher series. I don't consider it to be the worst. I do think that the best dialogue in this is not better than the best dialogue in even the other two movies. Um, but I don't think that the worst is worse than what Punisher '04 gives us. I think it's just I never had a moment where I cringed in this, where I didn't get what they were trying to do, but I did have those moments in Punisher '04. We talked about it. I mean, the voodoo guy coming up and talking about like, let God be with you. God's gonna sit this one out, and fucking the love stuff at the beginning, like that stuff was cringeworthy because of the way that they were doing it. But I don't know, man. I don't agree. I don't have. It's not great. I'm not gonna sit here, look you in the eyes, and seriously tell you that the dialogue in this movie is good, great, or amazing, because it's not. But I don't think it's nearly as bad as the way that you described it, the way that the audience who doesn't like this movie describes it. I don't think it's that bad. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
We are stretching our credibility right now, Connor.
Oh, dude, we defended Halloween Resurrection, man. We said that had the best dialogue in the
You defended
franchise.
it. You
You
defended it.
agreed with me that the dialogue in that movie was better than most of the other Halloween movies, and
Did
that
I
is a
say that was
take
better
that could
than
have
most of
easily
the other
gotten us
ones?
canceled.
Or
Yes.
did I just say it wasn't the worst?
No, you said it was you agreed that it was one of the better written movies of the Halloween franchise when it comes to dialogue.
Man, I think I blacked out while I said that. I don't remember that.
Look, man, this is what this show is all about, man. We find movies that are
To
hated, and we
me,
we say things that we believe about
okay,
them, and this is
look,
something I do believe.
okay. I think the best way I can put it is the dialogue in this is like that cringy dialogue that Will Patton is given in that torture scene from the 2004 version, stretched to an entire movie. I think everybody talks like that. I think everybody talks with, and that's why I'm having a really hard time getting in the mindset that this is just camp, that we're supposed to laugh along with this. I think I think it's trying to be edgy. I don't think it's trying to be campy.
I don't know, man, because it's so cartoonish and outlandish some of the shit that they say in this. Like it fits the tone that they're going for. The tone of Punisher '04, those lines of dialogue do not fit. We talked about Will Patton sticking out like a sore thumb in that movie. But when you're making a movie that's meant to be this campy, insane cartoon of a movie, it's okay to have those lines, man. Like it fits the tone of the movie. If you're trying to make a a serious film like the Punisher '04 was, yeah, it's gonna stand out. But nothing stands out in this as like this choice did not make sense with what they were going for.
I disagree that I'm not going to blanketly call that movie a serious movie.
It's a more it takes itself serious to an extent that this movie does not.
It's a very similar thing to me where the Punisher plays like a straight man in these movies. In 2004
I'll agree with
and
that.
in this movie, he definitely seems like the straight man in a world that's a little heightened. With the 2004, they still try to make it look more or less like our world, but the behaviors of the characters surrounding the Punisher, especially the villains, I don't think they're asking us to take it seriously. And crank
Dude, I
that
don't
up.
know. I don't
I don't know,
know.
man.
I don't think they're telling us that we have to take everything seriously with them, and I think that's where your point about you appreciating John Travolta comes in, and what I didn't appreciate about him is that I do think the movie does have moments where they are asking us to take them more seriously than the movie is letting us take them. Where in this case, I think when they're trying to, I think there's a lot of moments where they're telling you like, okay, don't take this seriously. But the moments where we're supposed to take it seriously, the dialogue doesn't knock it out of the park. I'm not saying it does, and I'm not ever going to say it does. But they tone it down with the over the top nature of what they're trying to say for those scenes, and that's why it's why I think the dialogue for this movie goes perfectly with the tone that they're trying to put, even if it's not the best. Could it have been better written? I'm not gonna dispute that at all. It could have absolutely had better dialogue. It should have had better dialogue. It would take this movie to a whole nother level for me if it had better dialogue. And it doesn't have it. But I am gonna contend that it's not that bad. I don't think it's as bad as people say that it is because of how well it does fit what they're doing.
It's bad.
And you can disagree. That's fine.
It we talk about dialogue a lot on this show, which is surprising because it seems like dialogue is really, I mean, how much do we expect from movies like this in terms of their dialogue? It used to be that
Yeah.
we like genre movies weren't really expected to have what Quentin Tarantino-esque dialogue, like something of that caliber. I mean, honestly, it's just I think it got normalized after the prequels, and then the standard was raised, I suppose. Yeah, I'm just surprised that dialogue continues to come up in these discussions because I didn't expect good dialogue from either of these movies.
I'll agree.
Yeah, I yeah.
Well,
So
that's the thing. I expected it to be passable, and in both movies, it was.
let me put it this way: if I'm writing a review for this movie, the dialogue doesn't come up, not because I like it, but because it's not one of the things that they needed to get right and didn't.
That's
I
very
think
fair.
this dialogue could be put on a movie that has much more excellent visuals and a much, let's say, a better, not a better cast, but a cast directed better. And I wouldn't really, it wouldn't stand out to me.
And that's fair. And there's things that we're going to agree to disagree. I will agree with you there as far as like perception for sure. I think if what you just described there would have been the case for this movie, I don't think we would be having this discussion. I just don't. I
Yeah,
don't think we'd be able to have it.
I think
Um,
so. I
but
think so.
it's just going to have to land with you. And if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, it's just going to have to land with you or it's not going to. And that conversation was a perfect thing there. So I want to ask you if there's anything else you wanted to bring up before we delivered a final verdict on this movie.
Man, we've been talking about this for so long, and I the rant meter I think is on low now. I think I've said my piece and I've made my case. I don't at this point. I think it'd just be mean to to what nitpick all of the little things. I mean, the fact that the Punisher doesn't have a character arc, uh, nobody does really in this movie. Um, in what to pick apart the shots that are so obviously, you know, either they have bad CGI or bad screen. I just don't see much of a point in continuing down that road. So unless we have something more compelling to talk about, I think we can move on to our final verdicts.
Let's do it up. Let's do it up, and let's start with you. 'Cause I know your rant meter's low, but let's use what you got left to give us your final thoughts on this movie.
And I was cast as the villain, and I played that part with relish. I It's a movie that I used to have tolerance for because I was at a stage where I was really excited to be old enough to be watching movies like this, frankly.
That's fair.
When I was 15, this was such um, a cool thing for me to be watching movies like Punisher Warzone after having been watching, Spider-Man and Batman. Like the hardest movie I had been able to see was The Dark Knight. So I think this is something of a gateway drug for harder stuff, right? In the comic book world. Just like I
Yeah.
think the Punisher is a gateway drug as a character for anti-heroes. I mean, the Punisher really is going to be your introduction to that as a kid. I bet he's probably going to be the first character that you read about that's a true anti-hero. And in the spirit of that, you know I think 14-year-olds will get a kick out of this movie. I'm too old for that, man. I just turned 25. So it's just not a movie that has anything to offer me anymore. I've seen this exact thing done better in so many different formats and so many different ways. And I just can't honestly recommend it to anybody who's graduated high school, you know, love the Punisher character or not. Maybe you can watch it for Ray Stevenson, but I think you'll lament the fact that such a good casting choice was done for such a poorly made movie. That's why I'm gonna have to be honest. I think the rating for this movie is above a 2. I gave it a 1.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Yes, you did.
So I'd be lying if I said anything other than that this movie is that bad.
If we had a rating lower than it's that bad, would you give it, like, if we had a rating that said like it's the worst, would you give it to
It's
this
the
movie?
worst. As that's mean. I mean, the
Because,
fact
like, I would
is,
have, full disclosure, I would have given an "It's the Worst" to Waterworld. So so what would you have put this movie in that category for you, or would you say that your feelings on this movie, despite being rant worthy, don't give that same response?
I mean, the worst is pretty hyperbolic. Like literally the worst. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as Batman and Robin or Catwoman or the true bottom of the barrel comic book movies, right? So there's a line that this movie hasn't crossed for me. I've ranted about it enough. There's I rant because it could have been really cool and it floundered. That's the source of the rantiness, not the fact that I think this is objectively the worst movie I've ever seen or anything.
And that's very fair. That's very very fair. And I guess that would be time for me to give my final verdict here. And for people who haven't seen this movie, who are maybe comic book fans, or I would like to speak to comic book fans who maybe want to give this movie a second chance, or maybe haven't seen this and are open to giving it a first chance. Imagine Chaos Comics collaborated with Marvel for a new Punisher Warzone comic book series. Then imagine it coming to life right in front of your eyes. This movie's brutal. It's violent as all hell. There is no shortage of blood and gore and violence. There is no shortage of over the top accents, over the top moments, over the top characters. we are given the perfect picture of what the Punisher should be on screen with Ray Stevenson. We are given a cast of characters who, when they are not making you laugh, are just giving you some of the most ridiculous moments you've ever seen in a comic book movie. In my opinion, this is a perfect mashup of some of the things that make campy movies and fun movies and violent movies in the comic book space great. But where it falls short is in some areas that really could have made this movie much more well executed or much more well received, like in areas of dialogue or areas of editing, which is a big one for me. And so there are things about this movie that I think most people will not appreciate, even if you appreciate other things about it. That being said, all of the things that I said that were good about this movie completely outweigh the rest of the things that I have issues with. Before this this rewatch that I just did the night before we recorded this episode, I would have happily said that this movie is not that bad. But after watching it again for the fourth time is the charm, I'm going to take a step up here and I'm going to say that Punisher Warzone is actually good. There's a lot of fun to be had with this movie. Do I think it's a great movie? I will never tell you that because it's not true. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to get the best comic book movie out of this because it's not true. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to have fun watching this as much as I did because it's probably not true. What I can tell you definitively is that if you let yourself, and if it's something that does get you to the point where you are with it like I was with it, you will agree that this movie is actually good. And that's where I'll leave it.
Here's something nice I can say about this movie. It is definitely the third best Punisher movie. It's in the top 5.
This is the last episode of our Punisher series. It is the best Punisher movie for me. It is the best Punisher movie for me.
I really wasn't expecting this. I see, it's so funny because there are times where I really do expect us to come out on different ends, just knowing our taste.
Yeah.
On paper, I really would have thought that this is a movie that we would have agreed on. I really thought that we would have agreed up until this point, but we're actually on polar opposites. I think the Thomas Jane is the best one. I don't know if you consider that the worst one.
No, I don't consider it the worst one. No.
Yeah. That would have been hard. That would have been hard.
No. And I want to say too, like I said that movie was not that bad, and I don't mean that. Like what I want our audience to remember as one of the main talking points is that not that bad is a good rating on this show. Like not that bad means that this movie, like we have things we appreciate about it enough to say that it's not as bad as people say that it is.
It's basically a recommendation, right?
It's a recommendation.
Basically us recommending that you check the movie out.
Yes, not that bad is saying we recommend this, we give it a thumbs up. It's 2 thumbs up for actually good, and actually great just transcends all of that. And that's why it's not something that comes up a lot on this show. It's not something that's supposed to come up a lot on this show. Look, sometimes critics get it right. Waterworld. But sometimes to us they get it wrong. And it's funny that you said that because going into this, if I hadn't seen your rating, I would have thought that you would have given this probably a 2.5. Just about where it would come out to. I know you had some things to say about it in our last episode, but when I was going through reading reviews for this one, getting the notes ready, getting the audience complaints ready, and I saw your 1.5 rating. I saw it by accident. I was just you see it on Letterboxd, you know what I mean? You see the people you follow, and then I saw your picture there, and I saw 1.5, and I went and told my wife, and we both had a very good chuckle about the fact that I was raising my rating for the movie after this viewing. I don't want to say it anymore. I'm a little embarrassed with what you gave it. I don't want to say what I'm giving it. But what I will say is I was on the opposite side of what you thought. I was like, there's no way that he hates this movie. Like this is like a Rob Zombie movie in the comic book world. There's no way this guy doesn't like this thing. And then you didn't. So we were both on opposite sides of this, thinking like we were going into this on a similar page. I thought you'd like it a little less than I did, but it would be not that bad. But I knew as soon as I saw that 1.5, I was like, we're going to war. And I think it was a very respectful war that we had on this show, but we definitely had our disagreements. I think this was honestly the most we've ever disagreed on an episode, I think.
And it's probably gonna be interesting for our viewers to see an actual disagreement play
Yeah.
out.
We don't do that a lot. We disagree a lot on the show, don't get me wrong, but it's mostly like very metered. Like
Uh,
it's not like we very rarely are like, "Oh, this is like awful." And one of us is
I
like, "No, it's
think
amazing."
the closest thing we have to this is I remember that I really did like the Wolfman remake, and you gave it a not that bad. I think that was the most opposite end that we have been on the podcast until now. But then again, this is probably the most polarizing Punisher movie. I
Yeah.
think
One of the
it's,
most polarizing comic book movies.
I would say so,
Yeah.
definitely. Even though I think it was just kind of universally derided when it came out, there is that growing cult fan base. And let me tell you something: the people who like it, like especially hearing your arguments, they like it for reasons that I can agree with. Like I again, the way people talk about this movie makes me want to go back and rewatch it because it sounds fun. It sounds like a movie that I would enjoy.
Yeah.
It's not a case where I just kind of scoff and say, well, why would you like a movie like this? It's definitely not the thing. Like, I hope nobody thinks that I'm a snob or I think I'm too good for this movie. Uh, I mean, as much as I came down hard on some things about it, I appreciate the core mission of it. I want my wacky, zany movies, but I think I want it to be done with skill and technique.
Well, no, I think truthfully where it comes down to is just how we see the execution of the material. And that's
Right.
going to be the difference of whether you like this movie or whether you don't. I can see this movie being polarizing in the fact that even though there are more people who dislike it than like it, I think the people that like it really appreciate it and really appreciate those things that they do, like I do. I think this is a movie that I really do appreciate. I think it's awesome. I think it's not great. I mean, I wouldn't go to anybody and tell you this is a fantastic movie, but I would tell you that if you like violence and over the top shit, watch this. But I'm going to give everybody a disclaimer that this movie is not going to be for everybody. You're either going to see the execution the way that I do, seeing it as this campy over the top cartoon that was executed exactly the way that they were trying to do it, or you're going to see it the way that Gabe does, and the way that Gabe sees it is it wasn't executed well. None of it was executed well. Well, not none
Yeah,
of it, but most of it was not
a
executed
lot of
well.
it.
It doesn't work.
The
And
movie, the word I would use to describe this movie is impotent. Like I see it trying
right.
and failing to do a lot of things,
And
right?
and
And
right, yeah.
it
And
tried and succeeded to do a lot of things for you. So yeah, I mean, this was you told me that this was going to be a fun episode, and it was, but not for the reasons that I was expecting.
no, it's funny. Like I'm glad I had the inclination for anybody I'll give you one more peek behind the curtain here. This was not the plan for this episode. We were gonna go into this. We never go into anything wanting to do the same thing over and over again, but we have a formula for a reason. It works, and we have fun with it. And to say that this episode to say that both Gabe and I were on the same page about this episode being a not that bad war zone before we started recording would be a complete lie. We did not have that in mind before we started recording collectively. So yeah, this was interesting, man. I think this is one of the more interesting episodes we've done. Interesting case study.
Yeah,
I'd be really excited if something like this came up again because I think we just proved it to. I mean, besides you calling me a 14-year-old.
well,
No, I'm kidding.
okay,
I'm joking. I'm completely joking. I think
I
we've
know.
proven though that when we have a disagreement, we have very civil discourse with that disagreement, and both of us present our sides of that argument in a way that either side of the audience, whether you agree with what you're saying or what you agree with what I'm saying, you can see the other side's point of view in the way that we say things. And so
I mean,
we're masters of our craft. No, we're not
hey man,
at all. We
I'm
are
the guy
awful.
who gave I'm the guy who gave 5 stars to Leprechaun 2. I'm not in the position to judge anybody. That's
Hey.
not what this is about. Not what this is about.
Hey,
And I applaud the restraint that you had in not throwing that back at me at any point
oh,
during
dude, I
this
would never. And
discussion.
that's the thing, right? Like, I just want people to appreciate movies, even if I don't. If somebody came on this show And I'm telling you this right now as a preview. If somebody comes on the show and they're like, hey, I'm going to be a guest on your show, I would really like to talk about this movie that doesn't get a lot of love. It's a great horror movie. I love it so much. It's called Mama, and I just really want to talk about it. I would say, you know what? Come on over. And I would do my absolute best to try not to insult their intelligence, to try not to make sure that they're awful. And I think that's something that we do on the show with as much decorum as possible when talking about movies that are as divisive as this one or as contested as some of the ones that we've covered in the past. And I'm glad that we were able to keep that consistent, even in an episode that we are mislabeling as a war zone. By the way, the graphics will say such as those who are seeing it.
And you know what, to extend goodwill to people who, again, probably think I sounded snobby during this discussion, I would rather watch The Punisher Warzone than Beau's Afraid.
Well, folks, the man, the myth, the legend has said it before. If you don't want controversy, don't come to the king.
I've not seen Beau's Afraid, by the way.
Thank you for thank you everybody for watching this very unique episode of Not That Bad. I hope we get the opportunity to do this again someday. But if we don't, this is a great one-off, and I think it was a fun conversation. Thanks for having that conversation with me, man. And thank you everybody for watching on our Patreon. That means a lot to us that you're here. If you're watching this after we release it to the general public, head on over to patreon.com/notthatbad. You can subscribe at any tier. You can give us the least amount of money as you possibly want to give us, and you still get our monthly specials. We wanted to make sure everybody was in on that. If we were going to try to do this as a monetized effort, we wanted to make sure that people were actually getting shit out of it. So subscribe at any tier. Give us the lowest amount of money you can if you want to give us anything. If not, just have fun with our episodes if you can. Head on over to our website, notthatbadpod.com. And that's all I really have to say from our side. Anything you want to throw in before you take us out?
Just that we really appreciate the continued support, whether you're listening to this on our Patreon or later on when we make this public. Any support, any way that you guys can show us that you enjoy this content and all of that, it just means the world to us, because
absolutely
this is a huge escape for me and Connor. Whenever I have bad news, I always look forward to recording an episode because it really lifts my spirits, and I hope it can provide something similar to anybody, which, if that includes me shitting on Punisher Warzone or Connor defending it, then hey man, like, that's what we're here for. So with that being said, I can't wait to, bring you guys more of this stuff, whether it be on the public channel or on our Patreon. And with that being said, I think it's time to call it a day.
I think so.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm Gabe.
I'm Connor.
And this is Not That Bad, saying, if he killed one of your men, then all you Krispy Kreme motherfuckers would be knocking every door down in the city. See you later, y'all.
See everybody.